I was just thinking, how should we intro this thing? Because it's not like.
Oh, I don't know. It's your show. I'm
Okay.
following.
All right. I'll just improvise then. Welcome to Upper Pylon 2. Normally, this is a podcast where we give an in-depth review of every episode of Deep Space Nine in the order in which they were broadcast. But as today is but 5 short days from Halloween, and by the time you're hearing this, it probably will be Halloween, Commander Smonsky and I are back, me being Matt from Arizona.
And Matt in Buffalo.
We're back doing another Halloween special. Last year we looked at some of our favorite John Carpenter films, and this year we thought that we'd take a look at a franchise that is near and dear to both of our hearts, and that being the Alien franchise.
Yeah, this has become a little bit of a Halloween tradition. We might keep going for a little while. And believe it or not, right off the bat, there is an actual John Carpenter connection to the Alien franchise. It's not easy, but there is a connection there.
It's like a 6 degrees of separation.
Hey, that's all we need for the thin connecting element between these two episodes.
It is. I mean, like, the connection you're obviously talking about is that Dan O'Bannon, who wrote the first Alien, also co-wrote and starred in Dark Star, which was like John Carpenter's student film that became like his first feature.
Right, and Dan O'Bannon is a hilarious comedic figure in that. And to think this incredibly dark, interesting universe came out of that guy is just wonderful.
It's kind of like Dan O'Bannon's kind of like a jack of all trades, because I mean he did that, he did Alien, and then he also directed and I believe wrote too the first Return of the Living Dead. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but a great 80s
I love it.
film.
I love it. It's one of the best zombie movies out there, just from the absurd, over-the-top nature of it. I love it.
Right. But so we're here today to talk about the Alien franchise, and specifically what kind of kicked this off is that we were talking behind the scenes a few weeks ago during one of our UP2 recordings. And Matt, I believe you mentioned something to the fact that you hadn't seen Alien 3 in a while and were going to rewatch it.
Yeah, Alien, and then Aliens, the first two in the franchise, I've seen a million times over. Love them inside and out. Can practically quote large chunks of it. However, I've only seen Alien 3 once, back when its initial release, and then years go by and you hear all the stories surrounding it of how bad it was, or as you point out, it's took on a bit of a mythos around it that it's some secret gem. And I just had to go back and remember whether this was what this movie really was.
And so that kind of spurned off this conversation where we thought we would do like a retrospective of the Alien franchise. But, we're going to touch on the first two films. We'll touch a little bit on Alien Resurrection. But a majority of this podcast, is going to be dedicated to Alien 3. Because if you guys aren't aware of some of the history behind that film, it's actually quite fascinating and probably could be a whole podcast in and of itself. But we'll talk about the whole series as we go along. So I think it's a good place to start as any, where we're going to go back to 1979 with the original Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. A movie that I saw. When did you first see it, Matt? Because I saw it when I was 12.
Oh, must have been around that time, but I only discovered that after seeing and falling in love with Aliens. So seeing what we will be talking about later, coming back to this, I didn't know what to really take from it. It was interesting, but it was kind of a letdown coming back from a kid of the 80s watching Aliens to this. But over time, oh man, you just grow to love and appreciate it even more. And one of my best cinematic experiences ever was going to a midnight showing of Alien at an old theater in Buffalo some years back. And you just really get to appreciate this movie with a whole audience just dead silent, watching this terrifying, terrifying movie.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So you saw Aliens first. I saw this movie. I saw Alien first. I was one of those kids that, like, I wouldn't call myself obsessive compulsive, but if I don't start with the first film in a series, and like I don't feel right. So I started with the first one, and was really wanting to get into horror. I'm a huge horror fan now, and my parents were real reluctant to let me watch anything too like R-rated, but I think they figured something that because it was an alien and not like a human killer, it was fine.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, sure. This is a tame one.
Oh, I mean, it's tame is not the word I would use for it, but I
No.
mean, they knew I already liked sci-fi because I was already a Star Trek fan, and they thought, well, science fiction is not going to be that bad. So I saw it immediately, really loved it. I mean, I think I had heard beforehand. The only thing I knew beforehand was I knew something was going to come out of somebody's stomach at some point. I didn't know what that would be. I didn't know what that would look like, but I was excited to see it. And then when I finally got to that scene, I sure as hell wasn't disappointed.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention that, that just flashed me back. My first exposure to this universe was my older brother, like sitting in a chair, tucking his arm up under his shirt and mimicking a chest burster thing when I was really young and just scaring the living hell out of me.
I mean
So
that.
that's actually the first instance where I was aware of this universe.
I mean that scene. I mean, everybody kind of knows the movie at this point. We probably don't need to talk about the plot, but I mean, and certainly we don't need to talk too much about that scene because it's iconic. But it's amazing because the last few times I've actually seen Alien have been at revival screenings. I think the last time I saw it was on Alien Day this year on 4/26, 2016. And it's amazing to me how much that scene in particular still works for because I mean I could tell from some of the audience reaction that we had people in our audience who hadn't seen it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's just hell yeah, it's just amazing when a scene is shot so well, no matter how old it is, it still can stand the test of time. Even if people know exactly what's coming, it still works. Last Halloween, I went to go see Psycho, um, performed at the Buffalo Philharmonic where they did live music accompanying it. And every one of the scares in there where people know what's going to happen, it had people jumping, like literally old people were jumping in their seats,
I mean,
averting their eyes. There's
I
just
will
these things that are timeless.
I will say, I mean, I know we're not talking about that series, but having seen that movie in a theater too, there's nothing better than jumping at the Bernard Herrmann score at the shower scene. It still works, and so does this chestburster scene.
Yeah.
I mean, and what really works about it is that some of the great things about these first four films are like a majority of them came before CGI was a thing, and especially in this first one, watching the practical model of the alien coming out of John Hurt's chest, it's a visceral thing that I don't think you could ever recapture with a CGI thing.
Right. And just like the execution of it is so good in that just the moment, and there's all this story surrounding that they didn't tell the actors exactly what was going to happen and
I,
they split with blood and they didn't
See,
know.
from what I understand, and I assume you've watched some of the behind the scenes material. I
Sure.
heard that that's an urban legend that they had no idea what was going to happen. They knew how the scene was supposed to play out. They just didn't know what it would look like.
Right. But but the point is it just works so well. Their reaction of the guy is writhing on the table. And then when it first bursts out, everyone is just a stunned silence.
Well, not
And just
it's
that,
a stunned silence, and then I love the best reaction out of that one is Veronica Cartwright's, who like is the one who gets splattered with all the blood.
well, that's the part they say she didn't know she was going to get so much blood. But just that beat of like the complete silence, because that's like, that silence just cuts into an audience, I think, of like, oh, wow, that's affecting everything. Let's all soak that in for a second. And then it's just back into the madness. And just that part works so well.
Well, that part works so well, and when the thing scuttles off, it gets people jumping.
Oh, yeah. But you talk about that scene. I'll cite one other one that caught me completely off guard. Like I said, this alien coming out of the chest, that was culturally pervasive. I kind of knew that was going to happen at some point.
I see. I like that I knew that it was going to happen, but I had no idea what it would look like because I hadn't even seen the parodies yet. I hadn't seen Spaceballs before.
I was just going to say, at this point, I think I had seen Spaceballs first. But the part that got me was when Ian Holm, it's Ian Holm, right?
As Ash, yeah.
Yeah. When he starts freaking out and somebody hits him with a fire extinguisher and his
Oh
head
man.
comes off to the side.
Yeah,
And
when
then,
Parker goes for it. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah,
when the
yeah.
milk went everywhere, I'm like, what the hell just happened here? Because you don't think that there's an android or something else there. This is like a complete outer left field craziness that happens. That was a part that was genuinely shocking to me,
But
independent of the alien part.
But what I like about Ash and that reveal is that once you know that that's what Ash is, if you go back and watch the movie beforehand, it fits right in. It's not like a sudden twist or a contradiction of story.
Yes. Oh yeah, it works perfectly where stuff kind of falls into place. Just his aloofness. I guess that's kind of the best way to describe, to me at least, the simulated humans in these movies. Just kind of weird, slightly detached from humanity.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of Ian Holm, and speaking of the rest of these crew members, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk, at least in this film and the next film, especially the next film, but we'll get to that in a second. The first film, seven main principal characters. What a great ensemble we have here.
Yeah, and this will be a big story coming up with Alien 3 and in Aliens, that a great ensemble cast. Everybody is very recognizable for one because of one characteristic or another. They all kind of stand out and super memorable, every one of them. And it's a bit of interesting misdirection in that you have Tom Skerritt as Dallas, the captain of the ship in 1979,
And
and through parts of the story, Sigourney Weaver is very much to the background.
yeah, and not to mention, I mean, you start the movie. Tom Skerritt is top build. Sigourney Weaver is second build. So I
Yeah,
mean, the movie is designed, at least in its first hour to hour and 15 minutes, to make you think it's his story.
right. And he does, though, get the, for my money, the single most tense, terrifying sequence in the movie
Yes, I
when they
agree.
go into the ductwork.
Yeah,
And it just culminates, it's just sheer dread the whole time, culminating in just a truly shocking moment, right?
I do. I mean, yes, it was scary then. I still think it works now. I do laugh a little bit when the alien does a little bit of jazz hands when he finally catches him. But
If my memory serves right, it's like it lasts like a half a beat too long.
yeah, but I mean that it lasted a little half a beat too long because that was our first like real good look at what it looked like because
Yeah,
it killed Harry Dean Stanton earlier, but we only saw a little bit of a silhouette there. We didn't get to see what the full creature looked like.
right. I mean, well, this is like, I mean, literally, man, that's like my biggest complaint of the movie. You
Yeah.
take out a half of a second of a shot or whatever.
No,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
No. I'm going to challenge you on that because my biggest complaint of the movie, and I think it's a problem that could have been easily fixed, is the awkward cut between Puppet Ash head and Ian Holmes head through a table.
oh yeah. Well, all right, touche, touche. That is something that stuck with me to this day as a kid. I'm like,
It
ugh,
always,
that didn't work.
every time I see it in the theater, it always elicits laughter because it's just not. I mean, I love Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott did a great job with this film, but it's just not a good edit there.
Yeah, they bit off too much from what they could pull off in that effect. All right, two slightly bad edits in the movie, but I mean, we could keep talking about this movie for forever because it's obviously two of our favorites.
Yeah, and I mean, before we move off of it, we should
Yeah,
probably say they were so lucky to get Sigourney Weaver because obviously she wasn't really anybody at that point. I think the only thing to her credit, as far as the movie was concerned, was like she made some cameo appearance at the end of Annie Hall, but that was about it. So this is the movie that really made her a star. And kudos to the producers who when the character of Ripley was designed, it was originally designed for it to be a male character. And
mm-hmm.
I forget who it was who said, well, what if we do it as a female? But whoever that was, and then, I mean, obviously Ridley Scott was instrumental in casting Sigourney. I can't imagine anyone else in this role.
No, I mean it just works out so well because this is, think truckers in space, right? Is kind of the what this Nostromo crew is,
Yes.
and to be basically, was she technically second in command on
She
this?
was she was third in command, so it was
Okay.
Dallas, then John Hurt, and then her.
Right. Right. So, but you need her eventually to kind of take command and to have some gravitas to her character. And they just did so well for her to kind of linger. It was a stroke of genius for somebody who could linger in the background, be kind of be believable in that. And then to, when her moment comes, to actually really snatch it and
Right.
own it. And it was nothing
It,
but praise for her in
it
this.
also helps. I mean, like, because you want her to stand out in some way before she takes command. And just the fact that, I mean, Sigourney Weaver's an Amazon. I mean, that is a tall, imposing woman. So that when she does take command, I believe her. Like, it's not a weak
Yep.
character.
I mean, later on, she stands toe to toe, eye to eye with Ron Perlman, and
Yeah,
that guy
that's
is
true.
no shrimp.
That's true. But so Alien, classic film, still holds up today. But the great debate, at least between most Alien fans, is which do you prefer, Alien or the next film, 1986's Aliens, directed by James Cameron of Terminator fame. And I have to say, I just saw Aliens in 70 millimeter last night, full sound, and I love Alien to death. I still stand by that film, but I'm an Aliens guy, and last night just affirmed it for me.
Yeah, I again love Alien, appreciate it more and more every time I see it. So who knows? When I'm 60, maybe Alien surpasses it. But Aliens, for my money, has a different type of horror, but still really, really good horror. But on top of that, they layer in amazing action, amazing special effects. That's better than Alien, which was already pretty good for the most
Mhm.
part. And another ensemble cast that's every bit as memorable, if not more,
I would say
than Alien.
no disrespect to the Alien cast, but more
Yeah,
for me because
most likely, yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny, and I kind of talked about this on another podcast I did about Alien, but I feel like there's some iconic imagery that comes out of the first movie for sure. I mean, like the chestburster scene and
Sure.
everything like that. All the stuff that people quote, though, it's mostly out of this second movie.
The Get Away From Her, You Bitch, all the Hudson stuff. Yeah, and it's like, I think between us, we could go through the names of every one of the Space Marines, right?
Yeah, and
I-
keep that in the back of your head because that's a complaint that I have when we get to the third one.
yeah,
But
there's a reason I'm emphasizing this in these two first movies. But
I mean,
oh, go on. Sorry.
so awesome that Sigourney Weaver came back, and what they end up doing with her character in this film is very much akin to what James Cameron likes to do with his female protagonists, especially as they progress forward, because he does the same thing again with Linda Hamilton by Terminator 2. He takes someone who's been traumatized and he turns them into a warrior, and her arc throughout this film is incredible. And like the first film did make her iconic, but this one solidified that she's like perhaps one of the greatest female characters of all time.
Yes. That decision where it's presented to her to go back to this world where she just knows the aliens are going to be there. They do the way she plays it and the way it's written. It's just amazing that she's going back into this where she knows it's just going to be pure hell. And it's really interesting, depending on what version of the movie you've seen, the
Yes.
components that lead this decision for her to make, So the theatrical release omits an incredibly important story
See,
element
uh,
through multiple movies.
yes, and I mean, when I saw the movie last night, it was the theatrical cut, and I really
Sure.
love the theatrical cut. It's still a great film,
Yes.
but like I'm so used to watching the special edition that I noticed where every cut was made, and except for a couple, I say most of those cuts needed to be in that movie.
Yeah. So the big moment that if you had only ever seen the theatrical release and probably VHS releases of it, is that it's revealed to her that in between Alien and Aliens, 57 years passed. And during that time, she was in suspended animation, so she didn't age. However, she had an adult daughter, or she had a daughter who grew old and died in between the movies, leaving her
By
with no
herself.
right, which that makes a hell of a difference, I think, in her motivation of going back into this hell. It's her
For Newt.
losing purpose in that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it makes a lot more sense presented with that. And of course, the Newt story. And then when we go into Alien 3, that's a big component that's very important. And then to a lesser extent and a much more regrettable extent, Alien Resurrection or 4, this element comes back up and plays into it. But the since we don't have to like praise all these movies all the time, it is kind of interesting, I think, for me at least, to talk a little bit more about these alternate edits and scenes that they added in.
Right.
For the most part, I think the extended edition that you see on DVD is better.
I'm going to say it's the better cut too.
95% of it is better. You have this, what we deem to be an essential part of the story of Ripley's daughter. And then we have an incredibly tense action sequence that's completely cut out as well. And it's
the robot sentries.
The robot sentries. So if you had only ever seen the original movie, at the part where they barricade themselves after most of the Marines have been killed off, they barricade themselves in this room and they have these 2 access tunnels that come down. And eventually you just get to the amazing scene of the aliens overrunning their position. What happens in the in-between is they have these 4 robot sentries, which I think they do mention in the theatrical cut after.
They do not.
Oh, that is part that is cut out?
That is a part that's cut out, and it's like, okay, as someone who's watched the special edition more than the theatrical cut, it's jarring that it's cut out. But yes, right, they do cut it out.
So they have these robotic sentries that they position in tunnels, and they have a remote counter with how many bullets are left and a camera. And at a certain point, all the alarms go off, and our remaining cast run to look at these sentry control things. And they're seeing the aliens are flooding up this tunnel, and the guns are just going continuously. And Hudson's like, it's a goddamn shooting gallery in there. Right. And eventually, the guns, the counter, the bullets are going down, 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 and the aliens just don't stop. And eventually, the sentry guns in one of the tunnels are exhausted. And they're like, well, shit, the aliens have gotten through that. That's a nice ratcheting of tension. And then the second tunnel goes off, and the guns are just going down, 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 down.
And then they finally retreat with like 10 bullets left on one gun.
Right. And that's just like, damn, that's where the horror of Aliens, for my money, I kind of made this argument before with Halloween. The slasher element never is super interesting to me, but when it's done well, it's really good. And Alien was like a really good slasher element. The part that I really like in horror is the dread of like, on the other side of this door is pure hell. Right. And somehow it's trying to fight its way through there. And that's the part that I really like in this movie, and they do it in that scene, and they cut it out in the theatrical release.
I will say the nice thing about the theatrical release that does preserve some of what you're talking about is one of my favorite things about this movie, and that's the Foley work, and specifically the thing that's designed to build tension for this movie is that motion tracker and the sound that it makes.
Every scene with that motion tracker works perfectly in my dread thing. And it doesn't work any better than that one scene towards the end where they're overrunning that position. They're like, it's just beep, 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 and you see a huge cloud of the aliens approaching.
Yeah, you mean like the 5 meters, man, 4. What the hell?
They're inside the room, man. Yeah, that scene is amazing because it's one of those shrieking terror. Inner Matt just screams at it of the moment where Michael Biehn sticks his head up above the ceiling to look. That could be, for my money, one of the scariest moments in film history, because all I do is picture myself sticking my head up there, and it is terrifying because you basically know what's coming.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but it's just like you still have to look at fear itself in the eye.
And I can attest, having watched last night's audience, that scare and so many other scares in this movie still work. I had a woman next to me and my friend who had obviously never seen this movie before, and every single beat was working on her. It was fun to hear more of her commentary as the movie was going on.
Right.
But I mean, that's great. There's two more things I want to talk about before we move off this. Well, actually three, because I talk about the Foley work, and one of the things I was looking forward to last night with the 70 millimeter was hearing I think that one of the best, most coolest, badass weapons in cinema history is that pulse rifle, and hearing the Foley work on that in 70 millimeter surround sound was amazing. Like, I almost cried.
So, Matt, like, I had just gotten into this discussion with friends of like, what are your all-time greatest movie sequences of all time scenes? And one of mine is that part where the Marines are all intact and they're going under the power unit to look for the colonist, and the aliens attack for the first time. Yeah. Where Vasquez goes, let's rock, and just opens up where I'm going to get the sound and put it in here. That moment on, well, the whole build-up and where everything goes to shit and pure chaos with the Horner music and the sound effects and just half the cast wiped out. That is one of my favorite sequences in film history. That 10, 15-minute sequence, whatever it is, it's just killer. Every element's killer.
Oh, it's so good. But I just wanted to hear those guns in their full glory last night, and I was not disappointed. Right. Second of all, you mentioned it, but it's something that I have to talk about every time I talk about this film. And that is not only how awesome Sigourney Weaver is, but the cast that James Cameron brought with him is just next to maybe some of these Star Trek and Avenger films, this may be my favorite ensemble cast of any film. I mean, the Marines, I'm normally not like the alpha male loving type, but these Marines are just like the best. And there's no one better than our core group, or as I like to call them, the last survivors of the Alamo group, because that's really how the movie plays out in its second half, is that they're trying to barricade themselves in and just make a last stand. But you have Michael Biehn as Hicks, Bill Paxton as Hudson, Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez, and you know what? As someone who agrees with me normally about child acting, I really like Carrie Ham as Newt. I think she's great.
I was waiting for an opening to say that on UP2 proper, I'll be as critical to kid actors and as anyone, but she is as good as you could possibly hope for this. Like, really pulls off somebody who should be emotionally just broken. Scarred. Yeah, and it's just, she does a damn good job. And they talked about how difficult it was to cast a kid for that, and they nailed it.
They nailed it. But I mean, what do you think of our Marines? Because I mean, next to Ripley, I mean, they're some of my favorite characters in this film. I get really sad when they get killed off.
Yeah, so just like, I love them, but as a funny little trivia piece, at my work, we name all the pieces of lab equipment. So if like something goes down, we name like a lot of the machines like Alligator or whatever, so everybody knows what it is. We have this one really expensive piece of equipment that has a syringe that basically moves around horizontally and goes straight down into suction cups. So when we first got this, they were like, wow, that's like, what's that guy from Alien? And people said Bishop.
Oh, I forgot about Bishop.
Right. But so this machine is called Bishop. My buddy and I are going to be the quote-unquote owners of a new machine coming in just like this. So that you name them by theme. So we have to pick an alien's character name for the next machine. And I'm like, Frost, Apone, Spunkmeyer. And we're just going through all these. And it's like Hicks, Hudson. They all are perfect names for this machine just because all these guys, Wisbowski. I mean,
that's the thing.
That's all great.
That's the thing, right? Even the ones that we don't know, I know their names. Like, they do a very good job of telling me who everybody is, and just the chemistry works. I mean, like, there's nothing that makes me laugh more than, I mean, when we're first introduced to the Marines, and it's supposed to be a serious moment because Ripley's giving her briefing, and then Vasquez just comes right in with, "I only need to know one thing. where they are. And it's just, I love her. I love all of them.
And part of it works so well is because we get the very slow buildup of first they're at the Earth station and you get grounded with Ripley, but then you have a nice, fairly long part where they're just on the Marine ship before the drop, where you see their interaction. Have you ever been mistaken for a man? No, have you? All that kind of good stuff where you get to know these guys. And
guess you don't like the cornbread either.
Yeah. Where you want to root for these guys when they go into it. So even the meaningless guys where you're maybe not entirely sure who Crow was, it's this group of people that we want to spend some time with. Any loss is something you're feeling regret about them leaving the story.
And thankfully, I mean, for our core group of Marines, when they go, they get spectacular deaths. I mean, I love Hudson getting pulled down into the floor. I really, really love the Vasquez Gorman's double sacrifice with the grenade. You always were an asshole, Gorman.
Yeah, and I love that little prop grenade of theirs. It's just like the size of a lipstick thing. So ever since I was a kid, I always had anything that big. I always thought it was just a grenade.
But before we move off this, one more thing I have to mention because it's a big iconic thing that comes into this, that's introduced in this film: the Alien Queen versus the Power Loader, and that the Power Loader comes in by proxy, but the Alien Queen. I mean, not originally designed by H.R. Giger in the first one, because obviously we just had a warrior alien in the first one, but watching it on the big screen last night, seeing it blown up, it's still, I know it's a puppet. It's obvious, but it still looks glorious.
Anytime you can pull off practical effects, I think it ages very well. And this is one of those instances. This is still before CGI would have been around, but yeah, it just ages so well.
And really, what I'm most impressed with every time I watch the film is the reveal, because like she accidentally runs into the lair. You see her surrounded by a bunch of eggs, and then you just see this gross thing, basically crap out an egg, and then the camera moves all along this like long snake-like tube, and then it finally reveals the queen that it's attached to, and it just works every time.
Well, every reveal of it works so well. When it comes out the elevator, it works so well. When it reveals itself up on the Marine spaceship by ripping Bishop in half, it works so well. It's just, they could do no wrong really with that thing.
And then, of course, I mean, last night, Ripley coming out with the power loader and get away from her. Right? I mean, that got a standing ovation from everybody.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah, it's perfect. And I think for the purposes of Alien 3, we just need to emphasize that Ripley survives. She saves Newt.
Which by the way, we dedicate the last quarter of the film to saving
Right.
Newt.
And again, she has now a new surrogate daughter and
kind of a husband,
kind of a fatherly figure, and I'd almost argue like a grandfatherly figure in Bishop,
and uncle, like a fun uncle in Bishop,
sure, something like that.
And that's one of the other things that they cut out in the theatrical cut that I miss, is that there's more Hicks and Ripley stuff that shows them bonding. And because I mean, I don't know if you knew this, but missing from the theatrical edition is that great last little interaction between them where they tell each other their first names. I really like that moment. I'm sad that it's missing.
No, yeah, I knew that was one of the additions. So, with that in mind, that this family unit has escaped, through escaping hell together, they're going to try and put their lives back together and ending with a bit of hope.
And can I say how excited I was after watching Aliens? I was like, I got to go watch the third one tomorrow. I can't wait to find out where they go with this.
So
excited.
I think in this case now we need to do a little bit more of a plot summary. And I can take the honors to set the stage for our discussion.
Well, first, let's set this up by saying that this is a plot summary of a film that took 6 years to make and was so fraught with production troubles and rewrites and what have you that we'll go into. But, you know, this is the film that they chose to make as a sequel to Aliens. Let's just keep that in mind. Okay, go for it.
And also, for what it's worth, there are different versions of this as well, and I'm going to recap what is the theatrical release, which is more or less the broad strokes what you see in other releases.
Right.
So Alien took place at whatever time. Aliens took place 57 years after that. Alien 3 or Alien Cubed takes place essentially immediately following Aliens.
If not immediately, then like a week or two later.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, immediately afterwards. The alien queen, off screen, had laid several eggs in the Marine spaceship.
How we don't know.
How you don't know, possibly up to even as many as 3, which is a big feat considering she had her egg sac thing ripped off and shot to hell.
That's what I mean by how we don't know, because her ovipositor is gone.
And presumably we saw her on the ship the entire time.
And she wasn't carrying some eggs that she rolled onto the floor when she got out of the ship.
Right. In any event, eggs hatch, and they cut themselves on the glass of the sleeper units, trying to impregnate Newt, Ripley, and presumably Michael Biehn's character. The acid causes a slight electrical fire, which causes the entire Marine ship to eject the pods, crash, and our surviving, quote-unquote, surviving characters crash land on a planet called Fury 161, populated by what are
British prisoners
/ religious monks / foundry workers. It's as if 3 storylines were combined through the process of writing into one.
Psst, that's because they were.
Exactly. And during the crash, Bishop was further destroyed. Newt was outright killed.
Drowned.
Drowned. Hicks was crushed to death, making Michael Biehn's face
conveniently not being able to see Michael Biehn's face.
However, Ripley has survived. She's now the only female person on this planet, as it's a evil corporation planet that's been widely shut down, and it's now populated by rapists and murderers. So it's later found that a single facehugger has made it off the ship and has now impregnated a dog and or ox, depending on the version of the movie that you see. What you then get is a new version of the alien, 4-legged and terrifying. Now, the part that separates this story is we're on a prison planet, a couple dozen people maybe here, no weapons to speak of. The alien proceeds to cut people up, kill them, horror ensues. A plan is eventually launched, whereas they'll move the alien through a series of tunnels into the foundry where they'll kill it with iron. During the course of this, Ripley discovers that she has been impregnated by an alien at the beginning of the movie. So as her last role in this world, she's going to kill that alien and then wants to be killed herself to prevent the aliens from falling into the hands of the evil corporation that's been lurking for the past 2 movies. And it finally ends with they kill the alien. Pretty much all the prisoners are also killed off by one means or another, and it ends with Ripley finally killing herself by jumping into the furnace. Right. Killing herself and the alien, potentially the last alien in this universe, as her last sacrifice. So, that on the surface sounds promising in a lot of ways. It's very unfortunate that literally the first thing in the movie is a giant fuck you to the audience because it kills off virtually everybody that we loved, rooted for, and were incredibly happy that survived in the last movie. They kill them off screen.
And I just have to put this out there, even at 12 years old, watching the first 5 minutes of this movie, I didn't know that a 12-year-old could like feel rage towards a film, but it turned. No, I'm not even kidding. Like it turns. As someone who loves that second film, it turns me against the movie immediately.
Oh yeah, and I'd argue that you could have this exact same movie, practically the exact same movie, without killing them.
In fact, it would probably make it a more dramatically interesting movie if you hadn't killed them, because how are Hicks and especially Hicks and Newt, the little girl. How are they going to adapt to a prison planet?
Oh, I'd even argue different than that. That yeah, it would be interesting to see these characters that we had fallen in love with involved in this story. But say you don't want to have these actors back. They clearly didn't want to have them in this. Have Ripley's pod break and her get out, but the other two pods are intact. And she goes, let's just hide them, lock them away. Michael Biehn can't fight anymore. It's established that he is badly burnt up. Bishop is non-functional for all intents and purposes. And I'll be damned if I bring a kid back out into this fight. Mm-hmm. Let's put him in a vault, lock him away, and then you could have the same damn story. You could. I don't think people would be weirded out by that, but I'd argue that's better than the bullshit that they do to these characters.
It's a middle finger. It really is. I mean, like, it's just, I was so upset that I almost didn't want to watch the rest of the film.
Yeah, it's amazing. This movie has a lot of redeeming. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Not only that, but I feel like this is a movie that's directed by David Fincher. Well, supposedly directed by David Fincher because there's a lot of drama with that. But you know, his films are known for being rather unpleasant, and they're unpleasant in interesting ways. But for me, it's just not only do all the characters die at the beginning, it feels like the filmmakers or whoever, whoever was adding insult to injury, because not only do we get to see these people die, we actually get to see Newt's autopsy, and we get to hear her chest being cracked open and all the blood, and supposedly there's an even more graphic cut of that had to be cut out of the film. But I just hate that.
Reportedly, who knows if it's true, but there was like a full naked child mannequin that they showed that was like way too graphic. It's bad enough that they kill him, but like you said, that autopsy part is inexcusable. They establish in the universe that they have a medical scanner. Ultimately, that's how Ripley finds out she has the alien.
Right.
So they're doing this autopsy to see if she has an alien in it. And yeah, maybe the argument is that Ripley is sitting there waiting for it to jump out where she'll try to strangle it or something. I don't know. But that's not really what it is. The reason they do it is because they want cheap blood, gore, stomach churning garbage.
And normally I'm okay with stuff like that because I am like more of the horror fan than you are necessarily. But whenever I do elect to watch this film, I always have to fast forward through that scene because it's just so thoroughly unpleasant and so unnecessary. Like, I mean, I already know she's dead.
Right. And the only redeemable, it's not redeemable, bad choice of words. The only good element of that is that Sigourney Weaver is playing it pretty damn well.
That's one of the things I'll give this movie, and that we'll talk about, is she still gives a great performance. What she's given is not to my liking, but she performs the hell out of it.
Yeah, well, this is where I'm going to have plenty of good things to say about this movie. It's just really unfortunate that it launches out with a damning thing immediately right out the start. Damning element to the story.
I mean, there are good aspects to this movie, but I'm just saying, for someone like me if you're beholden to that second movie at all, the first 20 minutes of this film are going to be a really hard thing to get through if you even make it through it. I'll just put that out there.
No, yeah, you're right. So I guess we should talk about what you think about Ripley's character in this, right? Because this is kind of a natural progression now in the story.
Right.
So lay out your problems. I'll see if this is somewhere that lines up with one of my possible defenses of this movie.
Here's the thing, because I know the defenses of Ripley's character in this film, and to a certain extent I can see them. Because, you know, here she is, she lost her first crew, and now she's lost her surrogate family. I get why someone who is at that point would give up on life. Like, it makes dramatic sense to give up on life at that point if you're that far into a deep depression. But the thing that I loved about Ripley's arc, especially the second one, is I felt she had overcome so much that to see her surrender to her own circumstances as a character, as a fan of where she had gone through, it's very, very disappointing. because I mean, you're taking one of the best female characters of all time, and having her go out. Admittedly, she goes out doing something very, very heroic, and like I said, Sigourney Weaver plays it very well. But just the morose, this fatalist attitude that she takes on in this film, while it makes dramatic sense, it's just not pleasant to watch, and it doesn't emphasize the things that I like about the character the most. She was always a survivor. She was never a fatalist.
Yeah, so this is where you kind of were covering it. If we're going to go ahead with the story that they presented, it is appropriate, I think, that she would have this
Yes.
kind of a reaction. The question is, do we want to see that? And most likely not. And this is where I think it's very important that we are emphasizing her storyline in the extended edition of Aliens is that she had this kid, and she lost him. And then she lost her job and lost a lot of purpose and everything. So he had already seen her go through that
once.
Yeah. And it was good to see her redemption from that. I don't necessarily want to see Ripley spend a whole movie in that valley. I mean, it conceivably can be interesting. Sigourney Weaver does a very good job with the plate that's handed to her, but I don't necessarily want to see that. And then while we're along with that, we get a scene with her that just has no place in any of these alien movies. An attempted rape scene.
You're going to talk about the rape scene. Yeah.
We got to talk about that.
I mean, that is a symptom along with the newt scene that really I hold those two things up as examples of things that really turn me off about this movie, because we're told at some point we're told right at the beginning that this is an all-male colony, double Y chromosome, and they haven't seen a woman in years, and they found religion, quote unquote. But the fact that there's a woman here is just going to rile things up. And so I think even at 12 when I was watching this, I knew something was going to happen, because you don't just introduce that element and have nothing with it happen. But what ends up happening is at some point she goes out to try to recover Bishop and the black box out of the escape pod for all intents and purposes. And then on her way back in, she's stopped by 3 dudes. And I see this woman who, had overcome so much and was kicking an alien queen's ass at the end of the last movie, get bent over a rail and start to have her clothes be torn off of her. And I'm just so thoroughly disgusted. I hate that scene. I really do.
It's awful. I mean, people shows like Game of Thrones will depict rape in a lot of ways, and they always are criticized for it. Rape can serve a function in a piece of fiction if it's not gross or sensationalistic or exploitative. I'm not going to argue that this had no place being in here.
No, because
it didn't need to be in it at all.
It was all 3 of those things, and it served no purpose.
Yeah.
And what I find even more kind of insulting is they try to soften the blow by having her punch the guy at the end of that sequence, but it's too little, too late. The damage has already been done.
Yeah, to have to be saved by a man at the end of it, it's in this world that they created, I guess this might happen, but damn it, they didn't have to put it in. It's like they were committed to that when they decided to make it these prisoners.
Yeah.
And it's just that's hack writing 101 of a woman in a male prison. You got to have a rape scene. You don't.
And then that goes right into my next complaint about this film, and something that I know you and I are going to agree on. This does not have the cast that the first 2 movies had.
Yeah. I mean, yes, there are a couple memorable people beyond Ripley, and they are, for the most part, killed off pretty early. But then you have a huge amount of just faceless British bald guy 1, faceless British bald guy 2.
Not only are they non-discernible, but the biggest problem is we were talking about how sad we were when, Hudson and Vasquez and Gorman were all killed off because we liked them. Here we're being asked to like these people that we just saw commit a rape and are supposedly the scum of the earth. there's nobody to root for in this movie besides Ripley. And that's my problem with Ripley's fatalistic attitudes, because there's no one else in the movie to really root for. I'm having to root for this woman who's a fatalist. So,
I don't think we're going to be asked to root for too many. Maybe Charles S. Dalton's character, Dylan.
He's okay, yeah.
Maybe. I'm just going to say maybe. But the only other one that we are probably told to or instructed to like is Charles Dance's,
who's character. Killed off halfway through. Not even halfway through.
And so he is a doctor on this station. Is he a prisoner as well?
Neither. I've seen both cuts and both are ambiguous. I mean, he does have that monologue right before he dies about what got him there. But I don't know if he's a prisoner, if that's the only way, that's the only place that will let him practice medicine.
I took it as he's like a quasi prisoner, right? To that effect. And Ripley has a sexual relationship with him.
Not less than 24 hours after the last person who was going to be in a relationship with it just got killed.
So this is depicted as a consensual thing. There's no question about that. It is a consensual thing.
Oh, sure.
But I don't take it as any less gross and weird than I did the rape scene. It just is so off-putting. And it's like, I get the rationale while you're writing this is that she is emotionally broken and she's looking for comfort in a place, right? Mm-hmm. But again, do I want to see Ripley, one of the strongest female characters committed to screen, get broken and have to go to man for comfort?
Well, I mean, like I said, if Hicks had lived and this was Hicks in the movie, then at least it would make dramatic sense because they went through some shit together, and so they'd be comforting each other.
Yeah, that makes sense, but it's not. And it's weird. But that said, this character is probably fairly sympathetic. He has an ambiguous background that makes him interesting. However, we do have him get killed off very early into the story.
Very early. I mean, like, that's a character that should have kept around to the end.
Right, because when you have the action climax of the movie being characters you've now spent most of the movie with, yet still not know who the hell any of them are.
Right.
You want to have some characters running through these hallways. And what I think is basically a pretty decent scene, you want to have somebody like that barely get out or not get out or have some stake to it other than I know I should be rooting for dirty, bald, British white guy number 4. And it's just
by the time we get to the climax, the only recognizable person besides Ripley is Charles S. Dutton.
Which, yeah, and it's because he wears glasses and he's black.
Black. I hate to put a fine point on that, but it's true.
Yeah, it is, because if you really get down to it, he's the religious cult leader, basically, of these people.
Now, the one thing I did like about him is I did like his eulogy during the Hicks and Newt funeral pyre.
Sure, I was too distracted by the very weird choice of split screen that they elected to do in that.
Sure.
But other than that, yeah, he is top of the barrel of the memorable guys for the most part. And the weird thing is they have a Doctor Who actor in here who there's a whole extra version of the story where he is much more memorable.
Yeah, you've never seen the assembly cut version of
That's the thing. No, I haven't actually. So I know a lot that's in there, but I can't speak to actually having seen it.
Well, I have seen it, and I will say this. It's worth watching if you've only seen the theatrical version, because I want to. I do think that I still don't think it's a great movie, and most of my problems are still there. And I mean, the rape scene is still there. The Newt scene is still there. The things I don't like about the characters are still there. But I will say that it is a better version of the film. And one of the more interesting things about this is that the character that you're talking about, Golic, who's played by Paul McGann, at one point in the theatrical version and in the assembly cut, he has an encounter with the alien that everybody thinks he's crazy though because he's calling it a dragon. But in the assembly cut version, when Charles Dance is killed, when the alien comes in to kill Charles Dance, and Gallic is sitting right there because he's locked up on the bed. He sees the alien kill Clemens and is fascinated by it and starts to kind of see it as a deity. So then it goes on to, there's a point in the movie where it's after the supervisor has been pulled up into the ceiling and killed, and so they're going to try to kill the alien or trap the alien the first time.
Before you go on, Matt, I need to point out that this movie has one genuinely hilarious part to the whole movie. Well, there's a second part with Bishop that's pretty funny. But after the main leader, administrator of this gets sucked up into a vent and blood is just pouring out, very, very shortly after that, they have one of the prisoners mopping up blood, like kind of cleaning up after the horrible murder, and he just keeps looking up
Staring
at
up at the ceiling.
It's hilarious. Yeah. And it's just bizarrely funny in this very nihilistic movie. And it's wonderful. But go on.
Okay, so you know what the scene I'm talking about that immediately follows after. They're going to try to trap it in like this one chamber, right? So in the theatrical version, they screw it up and like it doesn't get trapped.
And it kills half the cast.
Right.
Half of the unrecognizable cast.
In the assembly cut, they do get it into the chamber and they trap it. And then later, because Gallic is so far gone and just sees this thing as a deity and like a god, he escapes from the infirmary, comes to the people who are watching the chamber where the thing is being guarded, and kills them in really kind of creepy scene, and then lets the alien out, and of course the alien kills him. But that's one of the changes that I thought was, at least they gave that character a purpose. And at least it didn't make everybody look so incompetent during that first attempt the way that it does in the theatrical version.
Right. And the movie's screaming to have more characters. I mean, there's people on the screen, but there's no character of any depth. So even having a crazy guy that's actively trying to sabotage Ripley, I mean, it's an element that's been in these last two movies, basically. But something that's neat here. Something else.
It's a different variation because he's not interested in money. He just thinks it's a god.
Sure.
You know.
So I think we have to talk about the overall vision of this movie. Ultimately, do you think this type of story was the appropriate direction to go for an Alien 3 movie?
Well, I mean, I know Fox was having, once Aliens came out, who wouldn't be seeing franchise potential? I mean, like there's something I want to talk about later, and where they should have gone, frankly, with this movie. But this is not the movie that you put out next to start a franchise. This is what you put out to end a franchise because you kill off everybody.
Yeah, you kill off the villains and you kill off the hero. It's the bookend. But the overall story of, well, I do want to talk about it now, if you don't mind.
No, absolutely.
So at this point, we've been very critical, both of us, and rightfully so. I think we covered a lot of the
problems,
the critical faults of this movie. Where I'm going to start to praise it is the ultimate end execution of it doesn't work. But I did like the direction that they decided to go. We had the ultimate horror movie, and then we had an ultimate action movie. Where can you go from there? And I know, Matt, you'll probably argue that you want to ratchet up further. I am happy that they went in the other direction with that and kind of stripped away a lot of the elements and brought it down. Now, again, I completely admit this is a killer for a franchise. It's not the direction you want to go with that. But if we're just looking at this as an interesting movie, I'm really happy that they decided to go with this of take away all the weapons, make it an animal against these people. What I wanted them to do, and because there's so much religious themes in this and imagery in it, one of the iterations of the story was that she was going to land on a
wooden planet with monks.
A monk world, right. And that the alien she's bringing in is going to be interpreted as like the devil, and that she was going to have to get these people to embrace some science or something to fight back. That I like quite a lot.
but even you describing that there's a way to do. I am going to argue for ratcheting up the tension because I think that's the most logical place to go. But there is a way to
Sure.
do what they did and not have it be this like morose, depressing, just
Right.
black hole of a film.
See,
See,
that's where I'm going to agree, though. That's
uh,
where they should not have made it like Prisoners.
but what you're talking about, just from you're hearing that story description, if Ripley's having to like get these guys into some science, she's at least being a proactive character, which she is not in this final cut in the film.
Right.
She is purely reactive the whole time.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking now, I'm advancing a completely alternate reality version of the movie because the bone structure of what I am happy that they kind of elected to do is here. But then they gave me the wrong version of Ripley. They gave me the wrong version of the monks, and because they made it into a Foundry movie and slash prison movie. So it's like they couldn't quite settle on that strong story element. So they picked three of them and botched up all three of them. So that's where you get, there's a lot of potential here, but it's all kind of lost since they couldn't have a strong enough writing decision to commit to something early on. Now, I wanted this kind of, frankly, maybe lower key story. What would you have wanted to see with the ratcheting up alternate version of a movie?
Here's the thing: is that I'm not exactly sure. I mean, like, because we talked about this offline, and if you have seen, I think you've seen, and maybe a lot of Alien fans have seen the initial teaser trailer that came out for this film, Alien 3. And in that teaser trailer, it's not very long, but you've heard of this, right? Is that at the end of it, it's like in 1979, and we found out that in space no one can hear you scream. In 1992, we'll find out that on Earth everyone can hear you scream, implying that the aliens are going to get to Earth.
Well, they forced the hand and released the trailer before they had any idea what the movie would be about. But yes,
I know, but you've seen that trailer, right?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so at first I thought, well, that's a good idea because it's like the focus of the first two was like, we can't let this thing get back home. We cannot let this thing get back home because it will overrun Earth. So, of course, what you do to ratchet up the tension, the thing gets home. But you kind of informed me that that's kind of maybe not the best decision, and then I sort of see your point. So now I've kind of revised it.
Well, hold on. So my argument against that is that, yes, I think that's a very natural thought progression to go with the movies. However, I think we talk about Ripley, we talk about the alien, we talk about the other cast and all that. They're the huge memorable parts of the movie. But for my money, an element that is as big as any of those is the sense of isolation that is just pervasive in all of these.
Right.
The first movie is you're in a spaceship that's floating with 1,000,000,000 miles in every direction. Nobody is coming for you. The second movie is you're all alone on this planet. And when it's down to the last 4 survivors, that's it. There is no more help. You're just surrounded by aliens. It's isolation. And we do get that in the third movie, which I think is right. We keep that kind of a theme. I don't like the idea of going back to Earth because that's removing one of the strongest voices and identifying characteristics of this franchise.
Yeah, and I mean, if I want to argue my own point, the aliens did get to the Earth in a movie, and it didn't turn out so well. Those being
Sure.
So point taken. I hear you there, but there was something that I wanted to like. I think it would be dramatically interesting if they didn't make it to Earth, if somehow, I think where you need to go with the third one is something that they don't do until almost the end of the theatrical film, is that the first two films are like, this is about these people's struggles to not only survive, but to keep this organism out of the company hands. And so I think if you were going to make Alien 3 and ratchet up tension, if not getting to Earth, then I think by some unfortunate circumstances, the company needs to get the alien. And that needs to happen at the beginning.
Yes. Now that's possibly a good direction to go, which, funny you mentioned that. There has been many discussion of a new Alien movie that will come out, that will basically nullify what you see in Alien 3, and it will pick up following Aliens. And if you go online, I encourage people to look it up. There's very interesting concept art that's come out over the course of the past several years, where some of the concept art is very suggestive of this exact thing that you're describing, Matt, and it's very intriguing.
And think about the dramatic possibilities that that could bring, because you could almost start this movie the way that Alien 3 starts, minus the, fuck you deaths. What if the company does get a hold of the aliens, and what if it's because Ripley, Hicks, and, to a lesser extent, Newton Bishop, because it's a child and an incapacitated robot. What if they missed something before they went to sleep? And what if they accidentally brought them home? They brought the very thing that they were trying to not bring back home with them. And that's how the company gets in. Thinking about how, you could have this portion of the film where Ripley's not fatalist, but she takes it to heart that it is her fault. She fought so hard to have this not happen, and ultimately, by these set of circumstances, she is the one who delivers it to the company.
Right. I mean, that's the natural motivating factor to get her and, you would hope, Michael Biehn to get back into it. And
so the whole movie could be structured around like Ripley and Hicks having to make things right again. And
it's natural. They gotta finish the job.
There's your tension.
Yeah.
So
there is one other element that I do I'm on the fence with it. And we kind of hinted at it before, but back to the mother angle again with this, because it is basically showing, and she is not so subtly showing like morning sickness kind of symptoms. And they're playing up the fact that she is now pregnant with an alien baby. I kind of like that. Not just a
baby.
element.
Like somehow I never understood this, but somehow she figures out it's a queen.
Yeah, well, the alien biology is always kind of interesting to me.
I will say one of the interesting parts about the assembly cut is you see they designed a queen face hugger, and you get to see that prop at some point. Yes, because it looks like a face hugger, but it's bigger, and it's like the little knuckles are thicker.
Oh. I do want to watch that version, but I don't know. I kind of interpret it as in the absence of other queens, somehow it defaults up to one. Who knows? But I do like the imagery and the concept, because again, depending on which version of the movie you see, right, when she does the swan dive into the furnace,
right,
one version, the assembly cut, the alien does not erupt from her chest.
Correct.
But in the theatrical version, it does. And it's a bizarre, perverted version of it. But I think it kind of does form the circle in this story of when the alien erupts, the surface level of it is that she's holding it so it can't leap free of her and go to the company or anything like that. But the layered version of that is she is kind of basically cradling her baby to its death, of course, but it's a weird perversion that I kind of like, and that's like the David Fincher like effed up version of the story, that as many faults as there are still these nuggets that are very interesting, not redeeming necessarily, but damn, there is a lot of good stuff here. If you kind of like brush off the crap, there are some like nuggets of a core of a good movie.
I mean, I don't like the overall film, but there are scenes like that one that are very good. My favorite thing to come out of this film, and I think it's one of the most iconic things to come out of this film, is the scene where it's right after Charles Dance is killed and the alien's got her cornered and it's snarling. I mean, they use that shot for the poster. And there's a reason for that. It was in all the trailers too, and that is the one part of this movie where it like approaches the tension of the first two for me.
Tension and just like iconic moments where it's like
there's nowhere to run.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, damn, if it wasn't in a franchise that has the original chestburster scene and the get away from her, you bitch scene and these other things, that scene right there, as flawed as this movie is, that's like an incredible high point in the series. And it's like that would be one of the high points of the series if it wasn't surrounded by so many other great things.
I'll still elevate it to one of the higher points of the series, but
Sure.
because it's just it's a really really good moment. And had it been in a better overall movie, I think people would remember it more. But as it is, I love that 30 seconds of the film.
Yeah. And what I will give as my no hyperbole highest praise of the movie is it literally has the best set design and set building I've ever seen in a movie.
I will happily give you that because not only does it look cool, but for the fact that these are sets that had to that they didn't even know what they were when they were building them. So I mean, like it had all the potential, and quite frankly, should have come up haphazard looking and just not finished. But they look incredible. So the fact
Oh
that they were
yeah.
able to do it with all the drama that was happening behind the scenes and for it to look as good as it does, yeah, I will give you that in the movie. It does have good set design.
Yeah, it's great gothic industrial look and it just feels absolutely real. When I was watching this for the first time in years, I was texting you during it and you absolutely shocked me when you said they were all built sets because I was convinced they found some old foundry outside London and filmed the whole thing there in the freezing cold for
I'm
months.
telling you, man, you really need to get like the Alien collection on Blu-ray because Alien 3 has like the best behind the scenes documentary that I've ever seen. Like
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
and
this movie is
you get to see
crazy.
them. And the reason I knew is because at one point you get to see them building these sets, so that's why I
Yeah.
knew that they were real sets.
I mean, this movie is so wildly competently made in so many ways, yet a complete cluster F in so many other ways. It's like they were handed a crap, confused mishmash of 4, 5, 6, 7 scripts, but they put that on the screen so damn well. It's
Right.
gorgeous looking.
And I quite frankly think that had it not been a sequel to the first two movies, if this was just some other franchise's first film, that this would probably be like a solid B, if not B minus. Connected to the first two, though, it falls into that C minus D territory for me, just because it just doesn't live up to them.
Yeah, that's perfectly fair. But I will say it's immensely watchable. It's it's dark, it's depressing. So if that's not something you can get really on board with, I can't really say you should watch it. But it's entertaining in a lot of regards. And then you have the whole alternate versions, a crazy story surrounding it. It's a fun movie because it's so flawed. It makes you think about the art of movie making in addition to just this story. It's immensely interesting to watch this movie.
And I'll grant you that. The thing is that I would recommend that if you're into the franchise but you haven't seen this film, it's worth seeing at least once, or
Yes.
maybe twice to see both versions. But if you're like me, that once you see it once or twice, like I could probably go a good year and a half without wanting to see the film again. Like
Yeah.
I'm very happy with considering that last shot of Aliens where they're all asleep in the tubes, like the end. You know,
Yeah. It's like I've had many science fiction book experiences where I read them. I know there's a sequel after this, but damn, this book just ended so perfectly. I don't want to leave this story. I'm happy with it just ending in book 2. And I think that's this
yeah,
franchise.
yeah, that is this franchise, but it is a for me, Alien 3 is a fascinating failure. That's how I put it. It's like it's and I don't mean failure as in like it's an incompetently made movie. I mean failure as in like it was so interesting to see it put together, but it just for me it just ultimately disappointed.
Right. I mean, it's been over time, like so many things pulled to the extremes. I think we can probably agree it's certainly not this forgotten gem,
No.
but it's also not an incredibly horrible movie. It has a couple things that are just totally unforgivable,
Right. And I want
but
to
it's
put that
not horrible.
I want to put that out there because there's been in the past, and I joke around when I say, "Oh, I can't stand Alien 3," and I say that in just passing conversation. But what I mean is that it's not horrible, but I mean, I told you this off air, and I kind of want to repeat it again. When I walked out of seeing Aliens last night, it's when I think about that second film, and when I watched that second film, and how much I loved that second film. That even though I know that Alien 3 isn't a badly made film, it just makes me dislike it more because of where the story ended up going. So it gets maybe some undeserved rage building off the second film, but I totally hear what you're saying, and I know I agree with you. It's just, it makes me irrationally angry. I can't explain to you why. It just does.
Right. So I will certainly agree. Alien, watch it. Watch it a million times. Aliens, watch it. Watch it a million times. Watch Aliens 3 at least once or twice. Experience it, drink it in, but you don't have to. The other ones can live and breathe and be content and just live a happy life with the first two Alien movies.
Mhm.
Now, there was a fourth one in this prime sequence.
Yeah, we don't have to spend too much time on this
No.
because I know it's no secret, but it will let the listeners in. This is your least favorite film, and I hear you for all the right reasons. And I am not going to stand here and say that Alien Resurrection is by any means a good film. It is a piece of crap.
Yes.
It's really bad, but I sometimes like watching it, especially if I've watched Alien 3 like right beforehand, because if I just need like this will make no sense to you because I know you don't like this film, but if I just need some sci-fi crap that's at least got some attitude and a little bit of fun to it, especially after the moroseness of 3 and all the things that I didn't like about 3, I crack open a beer and I watch Resurrection. But I can't sit here and say that I think it's a fantastic film. It's not. It's really not. But under the right circumstances, I just I can get some enjoyment out of it. I know people who know and love this series want to kill me right now, but it is what it is.
Now, I know exactly what you're talking about. There are plenty of crap movies that I love to go back to, and I can't defend them. They're garbage, but I have whatever version of gratification, enjoyment I'll derive from watching it.
And I'll take it over either AVP movie. I think that goes
Oh,
without
yeah,
saying,
yeah,
but I will.
yeah. Yes, easily. The thing is, I in no way can find any sort of interest in this movie. Ironic, legitimate enjoyment. I think it is
A hot mess.
hot mess, but damn near loathsome. I hate it. And the really weird thing is, a ton of this cast I really like.
Yeah, me
And
too.
even then, I can't stand the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I have no defense for you. I have none. I can only say
No.
that, like after suffering through 3 and how fatalist and nihilistic it is, to watch some cardboard cutout versions of the Marines from 2, and just Ripley back from the dead acting strange. Somehow that makes me happier. I can't tell you why, but it does.
Yeah, I mean, Sigourney Weaver, we love her. I really enjoy Winona Ryder. She's awful and super wildly miscast in this movie. She's awful. Ron Perlman, he is just an interesting character in virtually everything. I got tired of his shit in this movie. The French guy in the wheelchair, Pion, I love him in like City of Lost Children and like a lot of his French movies. I don't want him in this. The guy with that crazy voice that's in The Crow,
Oh
he's
yeah,
in
yeah,
this.
yeah. Well, he's the captain that doesn't last very long. I do like.
Right.
I mean, I do like the guy with the guns, Christie, with the guns
Oh,
attached to
I
his.
hate him.
I have no idea why. I just like that character, and I find some enjoyment in Brad Dourif.
Oh yeah, I love Brad Dourif, but he is just like Brad Dourif is like a flamethrower. He can be great if he's handled well, but if you let him go off, he'll burn your ass. And this is him going berserk, and it's
Yeah,
awful.
I know it's awful, it's terrible, but you know what? Brad Dourif's one of those actors where, like, to me, he's like what people think of Nicolas Cage, where like people love it when Cage goes off and does something wacky, and I love it when Brad Dourif goes off and does something wacky. It's just one of those things that it's a niche for me.
I know, but this is in a franchise where it is extremely grounded. You have the Hudson guy in Aliens that's crazy and has funny lines, but when he snaps, you get like a real character there.
Sure.
You think
I
he's
think
going big, but he isn't really.
well, here's the other thing for me is because I dislike the third one more to a greater degree than you do. I think by the time I get to part four, it's like, well, the hell with it. The series is broken anyway, so do what you want. I mean, that's the
Wow.
attitude that I go in with it with, and so at that point, it's like not much is going to bother me. But I see your point.
Yeah, well, I got like two more vent things that I have to go through. You don't mind the dreadlock dude with the guns. I think it is disgraceful to this series with him and his ricochet shots. This is where it's live action crappy cartoon.
It is.
And it's just like,
But then again, so was the composite shot from Alien 3 of the alien, which we didn't talk about, but that looks awful.
well, yeah. Yeah, that's not so good. I wasn't praising a lot of the special effects in that movie. And then the last one, the Dominique Pion guy, his character is in a wheelchair. And I have family members that are in wheelchairs. And when I see a horror movie that's going to have a character in a wheelchair, it just is like, oh, fuck you. This is going to be some exploitative garbage, and it's going to be a cheap thing of him being helpless.
I mean, be grateful. I will say, as someone who watches more horror movies than you, be grateful he survives because the wheelchair characters don't almost never survive.
Right. I mean, they could have done much worse, but it just puts oh, screw you guys. As soon as he shows up on the screen, because it's an alien movie, he's going to face them at some point and be kind of helpless.
I forgot one thing I do like about this movie, and again, it's way over the top. I know you're going to hate it. I still kind of enjoy it. Our little friend from Seven, Leland Orser, as the guy who has the chest burster in him.
Yeah, and how he uses his erection gun to kill that guy at the end. It's awful.
It's awful, but I was in
See,
again,
your reaction to that is laughing at it. Mine is like just the double finger F you to the movie, and that's where it's like
that's what I was doing throughout most of the third. I think I was so broken by the third one that I was just ready to accept the fourth one.
Yeah, and I directed it towards this is really interesting, like not necessarily good, but very interesting in the third one.
So I get it. I totally get it. But I mean, I do like his one scene with Sigourney Weaver where she's there's a monster inside of you monologue that she has. I do like it. I mean, it's just, and I will say the scene that I do think is, acting wise, that is legitimately quite good is when Sigourney Weaver discovers the past clone versions of herself that are mistakes. I do like the way that she acts that scene.
Yeah, if I'm going to be generous, I think that is the best part in the movie because you do get that.
It's horrifying.
Yeah, it's horrifying and just like a creature feature element to it. Yeah, that's a very interesting part of the movie.
It's a bit Cronenbergian, and I kind of like it.
Oh yeah. There's a heavy element of body horror we're seeing here. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. You don't have to watch this one. Like if you're me and didn't like the third one and can stomach a upbeat but garbage time, I watch it. Otherwise, just steer clear.
Yeah, if you watch the first 2 and 3 and for whatever reason kept going with the franchise, even though you hated the first 3, this one's totally different, so give it a shot.
But that's kind of where we leave it in limbo. I mean, there was Prometheus, and there is going to be an Alien Covenant next year, which actually, if rumors are true, it's kind of adapting some of the ideas from one of the abandoned Alien 3 scripts. That actually was one of the ideas that I thought was kind of interesting. in that, this alien was a biological organism, and so it might spread like a biological organism. So I mean, it's different ways that it can go. I would love, as someone who really didn't like the third film, if this Neil Blomkamp Sigourney Weaver Alien 5, but really 3, ever gets off the ground. It could be bad. It could, I mean, I might be eating my words, but at this point, I'm ready to accept pretty much anything other than the reality of that third film. So,
Yeah, I mean, Neil Blomkamp, he gave us District 9, which is one of the best ever science fiction movies. And then he gave us Elysium, which I thought was trash. And then I never saw Chappie, but I know that wasn't well received. So it's like, it's very interesting that this guy is doing it. And it seems like it's kind of a passion project for him to an extent. He's been talking about it a long time. So I'm certainly very interested to see what he could pull out, because he has the potential of doing something amazing.
yeah, I mean, I'm willing to give the guy a shot. I know he hasn't had the best track record since District 9, but, he seems like he's kind of into it. And I'll give it this. The concept art has got my attention. When it came out, I was like super into it. And one of those concept arts does have like Ripley kind of looking like she does in Aliens with a gun, and right next to her is a scarred up version of Hicks with his shotgun from the second film. And I'm like, I want that movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's cashing in on the previous movies, the goodwill towards them. So it's like, that gets me on board.
It could turn out to be another Terminator Genesis, and I might be eating my words, but as it stands right now, I want that movie.
Oh no, I want this. We just have nothing to really go on than other than some leaked concept art and some passion from some people involved. I want it. I definitely want it, because as much as like the praise I can give 3, I'd be perfectly happy with that disappearing into the alternate realities.
I mean, could you imagine if like this film gets off the ground and it's good? We never have to think about 3 again.
Right.
I mean, that would be like a dream come true. I mean, I love it when franchises can discharge their own crap. It's one of the things I liked about Days of Future Past, that X-Men film, is that let's just get rid of 3 and Origins and all that garbage. Let's just start over again.
Absolutely.
So we'll see what happens, but as it stands, I think the first 2 are untouchable. Yeah. I think the third is an interesting film, but still is one that I don't like. And 4 is a very much take it or leave it. And for most people, it's going to be a leave it kind of film. But it does not affect those latter 2 films. Don't affect the passion and love that I have for those first 2 films. And I think if anything, the Alien series will be remembered mostly for those first 2 films, and that's a wonderful thing.
Without a doubt, they're 2 timeless movies.
And that 2 timeless movies that I'm very happy to report, having seen both of them recently with an audience, they still work today in 2016 and will continue to work probably for many, many years in the future. So Thank goodness for that. Well, with that said, we hope you enjoyed hanging with us and talking a little bit of Alien here right before Halloween. I think it's, we had fun talking about John Carpenter last year, but it's kind of a better fit this year. I mean, Alien is sci-fi horror. We're a sci-fi show. So it was the best of all worlds put together, and I had a great time talking with you, Matt, about it.
I did as well, but I'm going to argue for some Italian horror next year.
Well, we'll see. I might be up for that. I think I'm due a rewatch of something like Suspiria.
Oh, so good, so good.
But we'll look forward to that Halloween 2017. So until then. Matt, where can people find you on Twitter?
I can be found at ProSub0 for nerdiness, sports, alien talk. Come on.
And you can find me at mhanson0207 talking aliens, sci-fi, Marvel, you name it. I'm talking about it. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to just have us like do our normal UP2 sign-offs and then you're going to put Ripley in at the end?
I'll edit in Ripley at the end. So, yeah.
Okay.
If you want to do your sign off.
All right. So until next Halloween, when we're probably talking about Italian horror, this is Matt from Arizona, closing hailing frequencies.
We got nukes. We got knives, sharp sticks. I'm Matt in Buffalo.
And docking clamps are open, and you are cleared for departure. And happy Halloween.
All right, I think that was good.